As often I do, I want to thank you for the music this morning. I enjoy keyboard being played, as Terry does, and the praise team. And I miss the choir. It's going to start again pretty soon. So if you can sing and will and can come and prepare, we would love for you to be a part of that. It adds so much to our service, all of the music. Greg, you did fantastic. Thank God for you, for your attitude, your spirit. You have an ability to communicate, not only with us, but I'm sure with the people that you like to work with and God's led you to work with. And I, along with, I think everybody here was touched by your presentation. That's a wonderful little clip that you showed us. But more than that, folks, some of the people we read about doing ministry way out there is what Craig and others are doing right here where we live. And if you can be a part of that, they would welcome you, either contributions or participation or whatever God leads you to do. But do be open to that. And I'm so glad that he was willing to share that with us this morning. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
I'm also glad to be scared to death. You said there was a trap door
Yes.
right there.
Well,
I saw you pushing that button.
I had the button, yeah, it's remote, and I was about to get you. No, you didn't take too much time. You had a lot to say, you said it well, and I appreciate it. I sincerely do. I'm not trying to make you feel good. I hope you do feel good, but you did a super job in your presentation. And I think all of us were touched by God's Spirit as you just spoke to us. Thank you so much. We need from time to time to look back on some of the more familiar passages of Scripture. That's what we're going to do this morning. We'll probably have it on the screen, but if you want to look at the front page of your bulletin, it's printed there. I'm going to read it from the King James translation in a moment. But we're talking about one of the Psalms, perhaps the most famous of the Psalms, the Psalm 23 or the 23rd Psalm. David is the man whom God used to give us this psalm. And it appears that David had lived his life, was perhaps getting near the end of life, and he wanted to praise God for how good God had been to him through all the years. He had been a king of God's people. But long before that, he was a shepherd boy, taking care of the flock, the sheep, for his daddy and for his family. And then God raised him to be the king of his people. And there were some ups and downs. He was a real person. He was not always right. He was not always good. Ups and downs, real life. But as he comes near the end of life, looking back over it, he said, my, how good has God been to me. And what care has he given? And he put it in the words, not so much of the king, but the shepherd boy years before. So that's the motif. That's what he is, the language. It'd be like a cowboy talking about a cowboy. Or, an athlete talking about his sport and trying to communicate about God. Well, he was a shepherd boy, and using that motif, here's what David says. Let's read it through, and then we'll highlight a few things that we see there. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest the table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. There are so many different ways to look at this psalm. I'm going to pick 2 or 3 this morning, and we'll briefly try to not exhaust it, but to enjoy it and to be reminded of how good God is. Let's think about it this way, however. Let's think how good God has been in the past and how He will continue to be good in the future. This is not just looking back and saying, well, it's what it used to be. It's the way it used to be, and the way it will be, and the way it is if we walk in faith with Him. So let's kind of do it this way. I'm going to give you a little 3-point outline. If you can use it, it's fine to do that. And like preachers do often, they try to make the outline an alliteration, have every letter, of the outline, every word on each line to begin with the same letter. So I'm going to do that with 3 little words. And I just want us to use, first of all, the idea of how personal this song is. And the way I want to see that, first of all, is just concentrate and say it again and again on verse 1. Notice this. We say it this way: the Lord is my shepherd. Okay? But let's slow down. The Lord. We kind of say it like we speak, the Lord, But if you look at it, what it's saying is who are we talking about? The Creator, eternal, almighty God. Now you know that, but we kind of take Him for granted even when we're praying to Him sometimes. And when we're talking about Him, we sometimes just kind of assume, well, everybody knows what we're talking about. And this language is saying, the holy Creator, sustainer of all that is and all that is important. The God, the Lord. Now you got that? Well, let's tie it to something else. The Lord is my shepherd. It's not just a theological book or a writing about religion. It's a testimony. It's a public confession. The Almighty, Holy God is my personal friend, helper, sustainer. The Lord is my shepherd. And as I've said several times already, the concept of shepherd here and the sheep that we'll see in a moment, this is because David had been a shepherd boy, and he knew how important to the flock the shepherd was. But remember also, we read in the Bible about how personal the shepherd is to the sheep. Jesus talks about there being false shepherds and false people and folks you can't trust. But he says the sheep recognize the true shepherd's voice and follow him. It reminds us, and it should, that there needs to be an ongoing, regular communication and fellowship from the shepherd to the sheep, but also a response from the sheep to the shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. Now the rest of verse 1 is just amazing when you read it and think about what it says instead of just, sometimes I say at funeral services, I often read this at funeral services, but often I will say at a funeral service, and I know when people gather, at a time like that, and like the people, if you were at a funeral now and you were here, and I would confess to you that I know your minds are, pulled in different directions, and some of you are just wanting to hurry to get over so you can leave, and some are there because of friendships, and you'd rather be somewhere, sometimes. And so what I say is, what I want you to do is not just hear the sound that my vocal cords are making, Listen to the words that I am speaking. Don't just hear the noise. Think about what is being said. The Lord is, you can say, mine. And then he says, and I shall not have to do with anything that I need. That's what it says. I shall not want. I won't be without. Now that doesn't mean you'll have everything you might want, in the sense that we use the word want. You know, I'd like to have this. We were coming over this morning from Orange. We got to Bridge City, and we're just chugging along there. We've got a nice car, don't misunderstand me. But I almost got out and tried to see why it wasn't running when a Corvette went by us. It was a brand new Corvette. Had the dealer's tags on it. There was a young man in it, a young lady in the front seat, and we couldn't figure out if he was trying to impress us or the car beside us on that side or her the most. And we just had complimented about how nice he was driving, that fancy car, you know, and it was black, it was real pretty. I mean, you know what I'm saying. So just after Gene says, well, at least he's driving with some sensibility. And about that time, he goosed it. There they jumped off the road. And if the policeman had been there, they would have stopped him. And he did that 2 or 3 times going through Bridge City. Well, I don't really want the Corvette. I would not turn a Porsche away, though, you know. And you know what I'm saying. We want a lot of things, but we don't have to have a lot of things. We want a lot more than we need. And most of us have more than we need. I didn't have to worry about what I was going to wear this morning. Did you? I had to choose what I was going to wear from a lot of things I could have worn. Same thing's going to happen, and I get through and let you out on time. You don't have to worry about eating. Just where you're going to eat, what you're going to eat. You know what I'm saying? But in all of the things that are important to life, if you'll let the Lord be your shepherd, very personal, the Lord, my shepherd. And I don't have to do without what I need. Do you know there's another psalm, I'll not read it this morning, but just refer to it very quickly. Psalmist is saying, I have never seen the Lord's people have to do without. There's a lot of people that have to do without, but God's people, when they walk with Him, are always taken care of. Some of it is they learn what's important and valuable and what's not, but also it's God always providing. So the first thing I just want you to remember, we'll see this again in the passage, but I want you to mention the personal aspect that David saw of the shepherd and the sheep, and it's so much like the Lord being my shepherd. So the words personal. Now the second thing I want you to see in the psalm is some things that are the provisions that God provides. Provisions in it. So let's see what he says here. Talking about it. He just said, I don't have to have anything, got everything I need. And then he says, He maketh me to lie down in green pastures, and He leads me beside the still waters. So He provides the grass. Well, what would be symbolized by the grass that the shepherd would want for the sheep? And He makes me to lie down in green pastures. Plenty to eat. Still waters, he said. Now you could take hours on every word here, and I'll try not to do that. But think 2 things about when it says green pastures. You can think about provisions. You know, He provides for us. There's food to eat. But it makes us to lie down. I don't know all that God may want us to see in that, but I think He wants us to see more than just filling our tummies. Sometimes we are so busy, we need to slow down. Sometimes we're so frazzled that we need to stop and think and feel and you know. maybe sometimes we need to be made to lie down in green pastures. We can go so much, so fast, so long, we just get frazzled so that we can't even think clearly. We keep telling our granddaughter, and not that she's unlike any other granddaughter, except she's ours. We keep saying, you can just go so fast and so hard and so long that you get where you don't want to do anything, even good things that you like to do. I usually use this illustration. When I was a pastor, there would be, and everything, it kind of comes in series. It comes all at once, and it gets less, more, and less, more, and less. And you come where you have several real sick folk in the church, or several funeral services, or some problems that need to be dealt with. And after several days in a row of that, sometimes maybe several weeks, that nearly every day something was out of the ordinary. And God called me to be a pastor as well as a preacher, and so I'm trying to help these people and be with them and give ministry to them and represent God in their presence, as well as preparing to preach and be ready for the times to preach each week. You just do the good things, and you know it's God's Word, but you get so tired and your mind is so worn. I got to the place where when the telephone would ring, I'd say, oh, I hope that's not for me. You know what I'm saying? Now, I felt a little guilty when I felt that way. If somebody needed me, I wanted to be there for them. But you just get, and you know what I needed? I needed to lie down in green pastures. I needed a little time for myself. I need a little time to think, get my mind on something else. Let God give me refreshment. So when he's talking here about lying down in green pastures, it's not just good food to eat, it's also sometimes he needs to make us slow down and listen and appreciate it. Well, in the same vein, he leads me beside the still waters. Can you see a rapid, bubbling creek, rocks in the bed of it? I'm told sheep won't drink out of the water if it's too fast and making too much noise. I don't know much about sheep. And so when he says the still waters, it's not just it's a beautiful place, but the water's just moving enough so the sheep can get their fill of the water to go along with the green pastures as they eat the grass. When it says green pastures, as I've already explained, the next verse kind of fits in with that. It says, God restoreth my soul. Not just our fatigue, but the pains of our heart sometimes needs God's touch. Somebody's hurt our feelings. Things have happened that just upset our security. Things happen that we regret. Sometimes folks are less than kind. And sometimes they're just folk and they make mistakes. But it hurts nonetheless. But God always provides not just food and water, but the things for the spirit and the soul at the same time. One other word here, you could do a lot more, but one other word that is here is also in verse 3. He not only restores my soul, but then it says he leads me in the paths of righteousness. Now, that could be said he leads me in the right paths. If we go down the right paths, we would do right things with the right people at the right time. So it has to do with more than just the right road. It's the way to live, the paths of righteous living, the paths of righteousness. But when it says he does this for his name's sake, have you ever thought about what that means? He leads me in the right path for his reputation. When this man in the clip today talked about how God talked to him, we were pleased with him and thankful he told us, but we praised God when we heard his testimony. And so when we are blessed and living as we ought to, it doesn't just show the world ourselves, it shows the world our God. And when we will let him restore us and keep us as we ought to be and lead us and we will follow, God is honored as well as we are blessed. Well, we talked a little bit about the personal aspect of it, about the provisions a little bit. Let's use another word that begins with the word P, the letter P. How about protection? How do we get through life? It's pretty tough sometimes. Things don't always work out the way we were told they should. Sometimes our expectations are wrong. I want to quickly tell you this. If I've not done this, I think this might help you at various times in life, especially young people. Sometimes we grow up with kind of an idealized thought, picture of what life's supposed to be. And then when life's not like we've always thought it's supposed to be, we think God's failed or we've messed up. So let me say one thing about that. I had a young lady that asked for an appointment with me on an occasion as her pastor. She was married, had 2 children, and she came and she just was so distraught when she got into my office. I passed the time of day for just a moment, and it's time for us to talk why she wanted to come, and she wanted to get right on it. And she says, I just am a terrible wife and mother. Her reputation was anything but that. She was a lady. She was a nice person. Their family was wonderful and blessed, so it appeared. And she said, I'm a terrible mother. And I said, well, wait a minute. Tell me, what makes you evaluate yourself that way? Well, she began to tell me what a wife ought to be. A wife ought to do this, and she ought to respond this way, and she ought to do this, and look this way, and go and do this, and this, and she got clear. Nothing she said was bad, but I said, well, where did you get that? Who said you're supposed to be all of that? And she said, well, I thought that since I was a little girl. And I said, well, tell me about motherhood. She began to tell me how she had failed. And I said, well, who said you were supposed to be that in order to be a good mother? Well, I've always thought that's what mothers were. I said, you know what it sounds like? You're telling me what you read in all the fairy tales about life. Where everybody's perfect and everything's okay and all things are the right shade of colors and nobody has a problem. And life's not a fairy tale. And so when she got out of what she thought it always should be and found out it wasn't that way, she thought it was all her fault. Sometimes we need to say, I'm down because I was up too high. Sometimes we think life promises us more than it does. And we expect God to give us more than He ever even mentioned. And we begin to think, well, we're entitled to this. And when it doesn't work out perfectly, we have a problem. So that could be one part. But let me tell you when there's some real difficulties, what God does. Look at verse 4. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I won't be afraid, because I know you're with me. We've got some problems. We need some protection. We'll see that more in the next phrase. But I want you to notice here when it says, I will walk through. You notice that? You've heard preachers say that, I bet you. I will walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I'm going to come out on the other side. Now, the valley of the shadow of death can mean lots of things. We refer to it usually as just talking about death itself, but even if that's all it meant, you're going to walk through that too. Death is coming to all of us at some time in the future, but you don't live and die. You live and pass through death to life eternal. So you go through the valley of the shadow of death. We're told that there were some valleys more like a crack in a marble or a granite hillside, and a real narrow passageway where the rock was nearly straight up on either side, and the place we could walk was very narrow. And as people would pass through little valleys such as that, which were extreme, they could be rather frightening. but we walk through them and come out on the other side. And even if it just refers to death, death is not permanent. Not for Christians, not for unchristians. Because after death there are two places, and you have your choice. There's a place called hell, prepared for Satan and his angels. And there's a place called paradise, or heaven. So you walk through the valley of death and all of the fears and shadows that it causes. But back to the motif of the shepherd. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. And then he says, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Now, I'm not halfway through what I could be saying this morning, so I'm going to quit after explaining this. And we'll pick up next Sunday, Lord willing, or the next Sunday. I may not be here next Sunday. I have a little surgery thing to be done this coming Wednesday. It's not a big deal. It's on my lip. You may have noticed it's been kind of bad for 2 or 3 weeks. And when the doctor took out what was not good there, it was biopsied and it needs some more. So I'm going to have some procedure done Wednesday morning. She tells me I better not come Wednesday night. I'd be swollen lip and you wouldn't want to see it probably. But she thinks I'll be able by next Sunday to be here. If not, we'll make some kind of arrangement. But either next Sunday or the next Sunday. Remember me in your prayers, by the way. But I will pick up and finish this. And I hope you'll come back to get the rest. If you don't come, it means you didn't like it first. And I'll be offended real badly if you do that. And I wouldn't be. I know sometimes you can't always come, but most of the time you can. So please come back. You've already paid for it. You might as well get the second half, I guess we should say, all right? Let's just look at this in closing. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Now, what's a rod and staff for the shepherd? Probably you already know this, but let me refresh your memory. There are two weapons, basically. The rod was a little short thing, kind of like a billy club, sawed-off baseball bat, made of wood usually, might be implanted with some rocks or something, you know. Maybe a strap on the end so you could put it over your wrist, or a holster, you know, to keep it, you know. It was kind of a weapon. Now, not a weapon so much to use on another person, but a wolf, or any kind of animal that might threaten any of the sheep or the shepherd. They stayed out with them in the daytime in some pretty wild country. Often they would bring the flock back into a kind of a common corral to have protection tonight and safe place and more people there. But the shepherd was responsible for the sheep, and often the shepherd was so responsible that it would be his livelihood if he didn't take care of them. And certainly it was his problem to take care of himself out in the wild area. So he had a rod. But he had a staff as well. And you've seen in the Christmas stories, you know, when the wise men and the shepherds come, they sometimes walk down the aisle and we eat them. So they have a long, with a crook, you know. Now, this sounds funny, and you say, oh, that's not that way. But let me tell you what the people that know about this, certainly in biblical land, say sometime about the staff. They say that this long staff, crooked at the end, like an overgrown walking cane, you know. That was the shepherd's cowboy lariat rope. That hook in it was not to hold by his hand, because usually it's way up here, they're holding down here when they're walking. It was so that if a sheep or a little lamb were to wander off too far and maybe get down on the ledge a little bit below where it was safe the rest of the flock the shepherd was, and the shepherd couldn't even get down that little path to him to get him up quickly, and he might fall soon, but he could take that staff and reach down with the crook and put it around that little sheep's body lift him back up. And so, as the shepherd in a youth is now talking as an older man, he says, "The Lord is my shepherd. I don't need anything. He makes me to lie down in green pastures where the grass is lush. Sometimes he makes me lie down because I'm worn out. He leads me beside the still, quiet waters so the sheep don't have to be encouraged too much to drink. When I'm worn out, he restores my soul. And he leads me in the paths that are right, that honor him and bless me. Yeah, even when I walk through the most dangerous places, and in life come to the time of death, I'm going to walk right through them. I don't have to be afraid because he is with me. And his rod and his staff reassure me and give me comfort. And I've said it, I'm going to stop this way. That's the way it used to be, and that's the way it's going to be. And if you will allow it, that's the way it is. There's nothing you have to do by yourself. There's no question that you can't get some kind of answer to. And there's just absolutely no way that you and God are going to lose and that you're going to fail. I hope you can say, "The Lord, my shepherd. He provides everything I need. And even in the danger, he is my protector." Wasn't just for David, not just for a preacher. It's for any and every one who will say, "Yes, Lord, that's what I need." That's all you have to do. I ain't said it for a while, but we're talking about believing. You know what the best definition of believing is? Agreeing with God. He says it, you agree with it? That's faith. And then you act and live out that agreement you have together. That's what he said. It's right. Do you agree with it? Some of you may need to make a decision to say, "Well, I need to step a little closer to him and appreciate him a little more and let him help me more." And all you have to do is just say, "Yes, God, help me. I need to be better. I need your help. I've made some mistakes. I'm on the wrong path. Help me get back. Help me to know what to do. When it's bigger than I can handle, do it for me. Or give me a little extra nudge, and I'll do my best." Maybe you need to come today and recommit your life to the Lord. You can come down the front and do it, or just where you are, you can say, "God, forgive me. I could have been doing better. With your help, I'll do better." Or maybe you need to come and join the church. Either by moving your membership or saying, "I've never really settled this thing about faith and salvation and heaven and hell and baptism. I need to get that right." But however you say it, let it mean, "The Lord is my shepherd." Let's stand together. We're going to sing just a verse. If you need to come publicly, we invite you to come. If you don't need to come to the front, that's okay. But don't waste the next minute or two. Let God speak to you and you respond to him. And may it be a response of obedient faith. "Yes, Lord. Yes. You need to come. I'll meet you."